All right, we're going to be going through navigating your Sage 100 inventory module. We've had a lot of questions over it for the past few months, and we've decided to put a webinar together, and it was very successful last time, so we decided to do that webinar again for everybody who missed it last time. So welcome, and thank you for joining us from ISM. Let's go ahead and get started. Today, what we're going to be covering in the inventory module is customer pricing, physical count, kits, item valuation, how to change your item valuations if you need to, and also standard costs, how to change that. And then we're going to go through the period end close, how to clear out your negative tiers if you're working with costed items in the system, and how to clear out your empty tiers. Let's go ahead and let's just dive into Sage and let's go through and review that. Customer pricing. In customer pricing, underneath item maintenance, and if you go into your item, there's different various pricing that is contained within the Sage 100 system. The most simplistic pricing that's in the system is just setting up the retail pricing. Your standard pricing in the system is probably the most simplistic way to look at it in the system, along with the standard cost. Average cost will be calculated as you do different items in the system, especially if you're working with an average cost evaluation. Pricing in the system is at the top right-hand corner in Sage 100 in the item maintenance. We have pricing that's in there. We have item pricing that is set up in the system, and we also have what we call customer price schedules. The difference between the two is item pricing gives you the ability to set up levels, and these price levels are assigned to different various customers. Think about if you had like an A team and a B team. Your A level customers, or your customers with a price level of A, might be given a certain price level versus if it's a B customer, A being a customer that is faithful to you versus a B customer who maybe they only order from you every other year. When you set up those pricing in the systems, there's different pricing methods that go along with that. You have the cost markup amount, you have a cost markup percentage, we have the ability to do a price discount amount, a price discount percentage, or you can just simply override the price that is in the system. You will notice when you go into it over here to the right, you have the standard price and the standard cost. This, when you do percentage markups and percentage discounts, that is what the system is using these numbers as its basis to then do those calculations from that point. Same thing on the customer price schedule. What that allows you to do is just set up pricing that is specific to a certain customer. Keep in mind that if you have a customer that is assigned to a price level, but then you go through the system and you set them up their own special customer price schedule, the system is going to use the customer specific price schedule and ignore that you have set up pricing at a price level standpoint. So there's a hierarchy to how pricing works in Sage. So just keep in mind if you start setting up pricing a bunch of different places in Sage and you don't pick one methodology to work with, and remember that if for some reason you go in to do an order and you can't figure out where the pricing is calculated, you might have to go back and look at different areas in the system to figure out where that pricing was calculated from. Another place where pricing is set up in the system is in Sage we have the ability to do what we call sales promotion maintenance. Sales promotion maintenance is the ability for you to be able to do pricing based off of a beginning and ending date. And say, for instance, we're having, I don't know, a 4th of July sale, all right? And on that 4th of July sale, I can give it a beginning and ending date. So hypothetically, we just had the 4th of July. For us, it would be the 4th is when I want it. And then the same thing, I either can give a percentage discount or I can just simply say that it's going to be a certain price. How I apply that promotion, though, there's different things. I can apply it to a specific item. I can apply it to a product line. I can apply it to a price code or a price level, or I can say everything that was, say, for instance, a specific vendor maybe is having a promotion that they want us to pass the pricing on. I can set up that promotion by vendor. And then the system will automatically use the starting and ending dates for when that promotion will start and when that promotion will automatically end. All right. So that is customer pricing, how we have it in the Sage 100 system. Next thing I want to discuss in the system is kits. Kits in the system, there's two ways that we handle kits in the system. In Sage, when you create a part and you assign it to be a kitted part, there's two different places where you can set up kits. You can either do a bill, if you have the bill of materials module installed, it's assuming that you are going to set up the kits in the bill of materials module. If you do not own bill of materials, then you would use sales kit maintenance to be able to set up those kits in the system. I'm going to switch gears and just show you how it works in bill of materials, just because it's kind of the same concept. It's a lot more simplified when you look at it in the inventory management module, but it's the same concept that applies. So I can set up in the system a kit, and all it is you give it a description of what that kit is, and then you just simply say what components are in that kit and how many of the quantity ends up being in the kit. The same thing stays true on the sales kit maintenance and inventory maintenance. You're giving it a bill number, or what we call an item number in the system, giving it a description so that if I go in a sales order and put kit on there, and then I'm telling it whether that kitted item in the system, whether I'm exploding it or I'm not exploding it. Those are different features that you have the ability to do, because some kits you might not stock, but you still want to be able to say, okay, if somebody selects this kit on a sales order, it needs to automatically explode into all the various components so that your warehouse or whoever's picking the order knows that all these items need to be included. And that is true if you have your items in the inventory. Even though it says kit, it's not truly bundled and sitting on a shelf on your warehouse floor. All right, the next thing we're going to go through is item valuation. Every part in the system, in inventory, in the system is assigned a valuation. As you know, in Sage, we have different various valuations that are possible in the system. We have standard cost, we have average cost, we have FIFO, we have LIFO, we have lot, and we have serial. So when we look at those items in the system, and we look at standard cost, and we look at average cost, and FIFO, LIFO, lot, and serial, we considered our tiered products to be FIFO, LIFO, the lot, and the serial items. And when I say those are more tiered items, a lot of times, and we're going to get to this part, is when people at the end of the day have negative tiers in their system. Those are the items that typically cause negative tiers in the system, and those, when we get to the period end section, I'll show you how those need to be cleared in the system. But so items in the system have different valuations that you assign to them. Sometimes what ends up happening, though, is as time goes by, you decide that you want to change the valuation of those products because you no longer want that item to be valued that way. You have the ability in an inventory underneath the utilities. We have something here called the item valuation change maintenance. And I have a physical count still in here, so let me clear my physical count really quick, and then I'm going to dive in here and show you that. So let me clear mine really quick here for us. All right, we're going to go ahead and clear the items. All right, so let's do that again. So underneath utilities, when I go into the system to my item change valuation selection, I have the ability to go through and say, okay, what is the new valuation of my item going to be? So say, for instance, my new items, I want them to be FIFO, and I only want to select a certain part that I want to be able to change and make that FIFO in the system. All I simply do is hit proceed in the system, and that might be a LIFO part already. So let's get one that we know is not what we need it to be. And something's already open. So let's go through and do this again. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to get this running again. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and let's select this part again. And the item here, it is a FIFO item. So let me get one that is not a FIFO item. This one will work. When I go into my item valuation change, and I have something in here locked up. So let me shut completely down and let's go back in again. Hold 1 second. All right, so it is completely shut down. So let's try this one more time. All right, so when I go into inventory and I go to my utilities and I'm going to my item valuation change maintenance, I select the item in here that it's in question that I want and it's telling me what my current valuation is, and I can go ahead and change it to the valuation that I want it to be. What will end up happening is the system will take that item for me and change that valuation to that new valuation that I want to be. Keep in mind when you are making these changes for your valuation, nothing can be in progress, nothing can be out there. Your physical count entry needs to be posted. The rule of thumb is sales orders should be posted. Everything in the system should be posted because you want to make sure that the system is clean across the board to allow it to make that change as needed in the system. So here it is in the system. It's simply just going through, giving me my report to let me know what the change is going to be. Here's my quantity on hand. It's a FIFO item. And it's just simply telling me based off of this, my new unit cost is going to be this amount because I have select standard costs. And if you remember in item maintenance, I was telling that the standard cost for this part is this. And it will go through and make that change for me and make my valuation change for me. So as simple as that, I can go through the system and change my valuation for items. If for some reason my accountant or y'all decide to make a business decision internally to make that change, you can make those changes in the system. A lot of people ask about standard cost. How do you change your cost? So say, for instance, you had an item that's been standard cost the whole time, and now that you've decided at the end of the year that you're going to change your cost. It used to be back in the day with Sage before they moved to the new version that you could just go into the standard cost field in the front end of Sage when there was no quantities in the system, or even when there was quantities in the system, and you could just arbitrarily change that standard cost in the system. But the problem is then you had a mismatch between the values of the items that were in the system and what was there. Sage has now forced you, there is actually a standard cost adjustment entry that allows you to bring up an item, select what you want the new standard cost to be. You would just simply post that transaction and it will go through every item that is in the system that you have quantity on hand for and go through and change that standard cost for you on your behalf. So next things let's go through that we're going to discuss is physical count entry. In physical count entry, it's just simply selecting your physical count worksheet. You have the different choices depending on the version of Sage that you are on is some of the things that some of the items that you will see on the screen, whether you can print the quantity on hand or not. If you're on a version where you're not seeing some of the information on the screen, please reach out to AM at Go ISM and we can discuss getting your system upgraded to a more current version so you can take full advantage of all the features that are in the system. You also have the ability here to default the quantity counted to the quantity on hand. Some people decide to do that, some people don't. It depends. If you have, say, for instance, a warehouse management system, whether you're using ScanForce or an Accelos that has handhelds in the system, you would freeze your inventory like you normally would, and then you would just simply go to those handhelds and process those counts in the system is how you would handle that. So normally in the system, when you go ahead and you freeze your inventory in the system, if you're using a handheld, it will automatically, you just start counting. But if you're not, the system will give you what we call physical count worksheets. And these are the worksheets that go through and tell the system everything's in the system, what it thinks is there. You have the choice, like I said, whether you want to include the quantity on hand or not. Some people do not include the quantity on hand just because they want to make sure that their warehouse people are actually truly counting what is on the floor to make sure that we're truly counting what is there. And once you print your physical count worksheet, they would go out on the floor and do that, make their counts in the system. Once that is done, you would simply just come into the physical count entry screen and you would process those counts into the system. Once you put all those counts in the system and you make sure they're all good, you would print out your variance register and then just check to make sure that those variances are acceptable to you. Keep in mind that the variance, the GLs that it posts to, comes from your product line maintenance. So for all your items that are assigned to product lines, that is where it's going to get your inventory variance accounts from, and where it will be getting your inventory accounts of where it posts those numbers from the general ledger standpoint. So at month end, typically everybody prints out a series of reports that you normally go through the system to make sure that you are ready to close your month end. Those reports that you typically print on month end will be your inventory valuation report and your inventory trial balance report. You would typically take that inventory trial balance report and go into the general ledger and review what those numbers are in the system and make sure that the general ledger number and the inventory trial balance number does match in the system. If for some reason it does not work and the numbers do not match, then where a lot of people have issues with is at the end of months, they have issues with cross-posting over periods. So you have a lot of times where people, when they cross over months, they're at the end of the month, they're processing stuff. They don't pay attention to their posting date. So stuff will hit the general ledger, say for instance, I'm going to use October 1st, but the transaction truly happened on the 30th. So the subsidiary is showing the 30th, but the general ledger date was the 1st. So the first thing I tell people to look at is go look at your general ledger transaction dates and look at your inventory transaction dates to make sure that they're all in the same period, because that can cause a mismatch between the two. But when you go in the system to do your period end, the biggest thing that I tell people to run is make sure you run your inventory tier report. That will go through all your LIFO, FIFO, and all your lot serial items and check your system to see if you have negative tiers. What the system will do is, like a lot of those, when you see tiers, it says over distributed. That's what your negative tiers are. It means you've sold more out of a certain warehouse for a part than what you truly had on hand at the time. So what's going to happen is that's what causes your negatives. So what happens when you run that negative tier report, what it does is it will take all these negative tiers and go look to see if you now have tiers in the system, that there's quantities truly in the system for, and reconcile, or should I say wash those two numbers against each other so that those negative tiers don't sit in the system. I always encourage people to make sure you're running your inventory negative tier report before you do your period end, just so you can go into each month with clean numbers in your inventory and that there's no numbers that are in the negative for any reason in the system. Another thing that you can run is a lot of people that run tiered reports in the system. If you want, is we have the ability here to remove zero quantity costing tiers. So as you go through, sometimes there's tiers out there that sit out there, like the over distributed tier, it disappears, but you might have one out there, say for instance called May 2010, and there was 100 items in that tier. Well, once you sell out what's left in that tier, sometimes those tiers stay in the system and it's just going to show that the quantity in that tier is zero. I always encourage people once a year, once a month, it just depends on how much it bothers you to see a huge list of zero tiers on your cost detail tab, is to just come into the system and run this utility called remove zero quantity cost and tier so that it will get rid of those tiers into the system. And that is pretty much everything that we're going to review from an inventory standpoint. I can open up the lines to everybody if they would like, and I will be able to take questions if anybody has any questions regarding inventory. I'm also going to push a quick poll out if you don't mind, just answering the question for me. I just kind of want to just know, does anybody currently using inventory, just yes or no, just to kind of see based off the attendance of people who came in, who actually uses the inventory module. All right, and I'm unmuting the lines right now, and so if anybody has any questions about anything we went over, do y'all want to go ahead and ask that at this time? All right, I'm going to wrap up the webinar. Give me one second. Actually, I've got a question that popped up here. Nope, just a thanks. Awesome. You're welcome, Sue. Thanks for joining. So I'm going to wrap up the webinar. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out to am@goism.com or email support@goism.com, and we will definitely get you helped out and answer any questions that you need in any way, shape, or form. Thanks for attending our webinar, and thank you. ISM thanks you for spending your time with us this afternoon.